Hey, what's up guys? This is Mr. Chris with Infotainment.com. We got our 2020 Jeep here. Once again, we're doing one of our final videos on this build process. We're doing Rubicon factory fender flares at all four corners. So the Rubicon fender flare gives us a little bit more clearance. It gives you about 2 inches of height, in addition to the LED strip that's on the front. It's gonna give this Jeep a pretty aggressive look, I think. So we're going to show you how to install that today. Let's get into the install. All right, before you get started, you're going to want to grab a few tools. One is a 10mm socket. I'm using a cordless electric wrench, or electric ratchet rather. You also need a panel tool. I think you have a couple of Christmas trees you have to remove. That's what the panel tool is for. A poly rivet tool. Most people don't have these. I think you can get away with using just a manual riveter, a manual rivet gun. But I think the poly tool has a different mechanism inside that pulls that rivet a little different. If you can use your manual rivet gun, most people have those over one of these. If not, these are really cheap on Amazon. And a flush cut to cut the rivet off at the after you install it with the manual rivet installer. Basically, what we're going to be doing is removing 4 10mm bolts from the bottom of this fender, a single Christmas tree, I believe, unless I find another one in here. And then from that point, we're just going to pop this whole fender off. You can drill out all of the plastic rivets that are in there to remove the fender liner before you just go ahead and rip the whole fender off. If you do it that way, it'll give you access to the plug in there that you can unplug before you rip the fender off. This way that I'm doing it is the easier way. It's basically skipping that whole step. Taking the 4 10mm out, taking the Christmas tree off, ripping it off, and once it's popped off, you can access right behind here. You can get to that wire, so you don't have to take the whole plastic off. Your kit will come with new fender liners that you have to install, and that's what we're using the poly rivet gun tool for. So the removal is going to be pretty straightforward. The reinstall, that's the only difference from the removal, is you're going to have to install this liner on your new fenders. Way up here, and then in this hole right here you have one more. All right, after looking at it a little closer, I don't think I have to remove any of those little plastic panel pops in there. I think because I'm not removing the tire well liner, I can just pull the whole thing off. It should come off with it. We'll find out because I'm going to try it right now. But basically I'm going to start from this bottom edge here. It seems like the easiest one to get a grip of, and it's just a bunch of clips that are going on the inside of that fender attaching to the body panels. Now, if you were going to reuse your fender, you would definitely have to take off that liner, because the clips, they're kind of like, if you were to pull it, they're like disposable. I'm pretty sure they're all going to break off. If they don't break, I'll be surprised. But if you pull off the fender, the wheel well liner, on the inside you can actually see the ends of the clips, and you can squeeze it with a needle nose pliers or a wrench or something. You can squeeze it and pull it out nicely so it doesn't break. But since we're not reusing this, I'm just going to go ahead and rip it off. All right, there's actually 5 10mm holding this on, I believe. So there's one hidden right in here. There we go. And that should be all of them. So if we removed 5, that should be all of them. And actually, we didn't break all of them. We have one here. One survived. You can actually see the connector for your side marker here on your fender. And that, try and get it with my finger, but there's a red security tab on there. You slide that tab out, and then you can depress the clip. So it's like most of your connectors on this Jeep. It's got that red security tab. Pretty easy. So there's a single Christmas tree in here. There we go. All right, now that we got our fender out of the way, you can see all these clips that I was talking about. They're pretty much one-time use. Once you pull them off like that, they kind of shatter. But we're gonna need to remove all of these clips so we can pop our new fender on. Our new fender came with the clips pre-installed, so we don't have to worry about putting these on the new fender. But basically, once I get one out of here, I'll show you what I'm doing. All right, so what I'm doing back there is basically this clip is pushed into a hole, and all you're trying to do is squeeze these two sides so it'll fit out of that hole. And also, when you come to this last clip at the very bottom, closest side to the door, you'll notice it's really deep in there. There's not a lot of room to get behind there. We're gonna have to do something a little different to get this one out. I mean, we could probably just break it, but yeah, you're not gonna, unless you got some really long extended needle nose pliers, you may have a little difficult time getting that off. Line of fire. Okay. All right, so what I'm gonna do with our new fender here, I have it laid out. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-install the tire well. Just to make it a little easier, all I have to do is slide this whole assembly back in once it's all completed. So there, in fact, was only 4. It's the 4 10 mils that are on the inside of the fender when it's mounted. So it's the 2 up high here, and the 2 towards the inside. That one inside looks like it just holds on our wheel well liner. So I'll go ahead and put this back on. I'll throw this in there. There's a bunch of these panel trees that hold this fender well on, as well as some poly rivets or plastic rivets that will go towards the bottom side here. So that's what we need our little rivet tool for. You can identify the front versus the rear. The front has a heat shield on it. The rears do not. Also a lot bigger. And they are labeled. There should be an L. Yep. Not sure if you can kind of see that. Basically, I'll slide this up in here. All right. Once all your holes are lined up, you can start throwing in some clips to hold it in place. Way at the bottom here, you have a couple more. And if you did like me and you pulled it off, it's actually going to be the shorter one of the 5. So you'll have 4 all the same length. Those are for the ones that attach to the vehicle, and this shorter one is the one that's gonna just screw in the wheel well liner onto your fender. All right, now you're gonna be left with these 3 plastic rivet locations, and your kit comes with a whole bunch of rivets. You're gonna use quite a bit for the rear, I believe. But all you need up here are 3, and I compressed one so you could see what it looks like. This is essentially what you're trying to do inside the bumper, or inside your fender rather. When this rivet is through that hole in your fender, once you compress it, it's going to squeeze the backside down, pulling that center shaft outwards. Once it's compressed, this will be nice and tight in there. You can pull your rivet tool out, get your flush cuts and cut the excess off so it's nice and flush. All right, and the benefit of having the fender removed from the vehicle is I can hold this plastic nice and tight against here while I do this. If yours breaks off, great. If it doesn't, cut that off with the flush cuts. All right, and we're basically done here. We can go ahead and set this back onto the Jeep. All right, before we set this on the Jeep, our rig's a little dirty, so I'm just gonna wipe off some of the dust and dirt on here. All right, now set the wheel well over the wheel, kind of let that support it. Don't forget to plug your connector in and clip that little security tab forward. All right, now all we have to do is lift our fender into place, line up the push pins. All right, now we're good to put all of our 10mm bolts back in. All right, so we got that one little Christmas tree that was way up in here, that corner. And now we can throw our 10 mils back up in here. And then we have one way up here. And lastly, the one right in that hole. And that's all she wrote for this side. We'll go over to the passenger side, do the same thing. All right, jumping over to the passenger side, we're gonna do the same thing. Keep in mind, we're not gonna remove this 10mm, and we are going to remove that Christmas tree pop that's all the way in the corner here. All right, now we're ready to pull the fender off. All right, make sure to grab that 10mm out of your old fender that we didn't pull off, that holds the wheel well liner on. So we need to transfer that one over. That's the one that goes right in here. All right, now we're ready to throw it back on the Jeep. All right, now we're ready to move on to the rear. All right, coming to the back here, we're on the rear passenger side. We're gonna do pretty much the same thing. It's a little easier. We have 6 plastic panel pops that we have to pop out. There's 2 up top and 4 against the back here. And basically, once you remove that, this thing is just held in with some clips, and we'll just rip it off just like we did the front. All right, now that we got the 6 panel pops out, we should be able to just rip this out just like the front. I'm gonna start from the rear. Let's see how good I can do. And just like the other one, whatever remaining clips are in there, we'll pull those off with our little needle nose pliers. All right, now this bottom one right here looks to be the only one that we have rear side access to clip that off. Everything else is concealed, so I'm just going to grab my panel tool and pry these off. We can wipe off all the excess dirt on here. All right, let's move on to the assembly of the new fender flare. All right, so just like before, we have our right side. These are all labeled right hand, and the fender liner has an R on it. So we'll grab these, line up the holes, and you can kind of start with the 2 most outer holes with the little Christmas tree pops. There we go. And now all we're left with are the 6 little riv certs or riv nuts. All right, and that's all we got. And if you followed us this far, you should have 6 remaining holes on here. Those are for your 6 panel retention clips, these little Christmas tree type. And now we're just ready to snap this onto the Jeep. All right, once your panel's in or your fender's on, all you have to do is put your little panel pops back in. And all of these come with the fender kit. so you shouldn't have to reuse any of the old ones. All right, and that's all we got on this side. We're ready to move over to the driver's side. All right, and lastly, you can go ahead and reinstall all these little push pins here. These push pins. All right, and there you have it. We got our fender flares all wrapped up here. You can see it's a huge upgrade from our old incandescent lights that we had in here. These LED strips are really nice. This is a really good option for people that want to keep a kind of factory look on their Jeep, but also gain a bunch of clearance if you want to run some big tires. For upgrades like this and more, check us out at Infotainment.com.